Hello there, beautiful people. Joe here from Pictoria. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. What am I going to give you in this video? In this video, I'm going to teach you about the concept of managing your manager. Now, that is something so esoteric that you may not have considered it. And I don't want you to think of it in a negative way, because it's not something that I'm saying should be negative. It's actually a positive thing. And let me explain. If you hang in there with me for a few moments, I think you'll really get something out of this video that's going to help you and help your career. So the concept itself is the first thing I want you to think about. If you're in the corporate world or if you're working anywhere, you probably have a manager. So it's in your best interest to manage your manager. And here's what I mean. If that manager is managing you, they're probably managing a number of other people. And to be quite honest, people can be the most challenging thing on the planet. Managing people is not easy. So that's your advantage. That's your leverage right there. Knowing that by default, managing people is not easy, you have an opportunity to make it as easy as possible on your manager. And let's take a couple of examples. Let's say you have two friends and everything's fine and they're great friends. One of them becomes a manager. That's going to change the dynamics of that relationship because now one works for the other. And there's a whole psychological aspect that goes along with that. So you need to be aware of that. But again, that is something you can use to your advantage. The person doing the managing has to do their own job and manage people, which is a burden and a lot of work. And there are a lot of surprises there. So by taking on this technique of managing your manager, you help remove some of those unknowns for the relationship between you and your manager. Here's another example. You're probably going to have a one-on-one meeting with your manager maybe once a month, maybe once a week, maybe every other week. What I do and what I've done for years is when I have that meeting, I prepare a bulleted list of the things that I want to talk to my manager about before the meeting. This helps me to go through and prioritize the things that I need their help with. And then when I finish that list, I send it to the manager before the meeting. Maybe it's an hour before. Maybe it's 15 minutes before. Maybe it's just as we get on the screen or talking during the one-on-one. But what that does is set the groundwork for the fact that the manager is put at ease, so to speak, because they know that there's an agenda to the meeting. There aren't going to be any surprises, hopefully, and they can look at it in bulleted point fashion and go right down the list one by one. When you do that, you should really keep in mind that, let's say the one-on-one is for half an hour. You don't want to pack up that whole half hour with all your agenda. You want to leave about half of that open for the manager because they probably have some things that they want to talk to you about that you don't know about yet until you get in the meeting. And that's fine. And as you build your list, you should make it in an order of priority that's important to you. Put the most important things first, even if they're difficult things, but put them in there. And put things in like, well, PTO coming up. You know, I want to take time off in 2 weeks. Maybe you have to travel. Maybe you have to go to the dentist or the doctor's office or something like that. But also put in there the things that you're struggling with in work. Like I'm struggling with this particular project, or I'm trying to solve this particular problem, or you asked me to do this and here's the status of where it is. So all of those things need to be discussed in the one-on-one. The one-on-one really should be for you, so you need to get the most out of it. But by preparing an agenda beforehand, that is an enormous blessing to your manager. And what happens over time is that they realize dealing with you can be easier than dealing with maybe some of the other people that they have to manage. And that's the way you really want to move forward. You don't want to be a headache for your manager. Because here's why. If they get confused, or if there's friction, or if they don't know what to do with you, or they don't know how to manage you, then that makes life difficult for them, and they can easily make life difficult for you. So you kind of want to help them help you and show them what works for you. And believe me, they consider that a blessing. So help them to help you, help them to manage you, and you do this by managing them. So that's one technique. By the way, a small side note on these one-on-one meetings: be prepared for your one-on-one meetings to get canceled or moved. Managers are busy. So if you work for a busy organization, you might have a one-on-one on the calendar, and then you'll find like the night before your manager moves it, or moves it to the next day. And this is aggravating because you had things you wanted to talk to them about, but you just have to be cool with it. Managers do that for any number of different reasons. They are people too. Maybe they don't feel good. Maybe they don't feel like talking. Maybe they're having a bad day and they can't bring their shroud of positivity to the one-on-one meeting, which they're all supposed to do. Anyway, so be prepared for that. And then send your agenda for the one-on-one meeting to your manager before the meeting. Doesn't have to be the day ahead of time. It can be half an hour before, and at least they have it. So, all right, that's one way you can manage your manager. That's easy. Another way, which is not so easy and can be a little odd, but you really kind of want to think about where your manager is going before your manager gets there. In other words, when you first start working with a manager, you kind of want to observe, see how they operate, see where they're going, try to pick up on their patterns, try to pick up on how they delegate work, how they respond to things. That way, it's like a game of chess, and that's important. So managing your manager is a lot like playing chess. You want to anticipate their moves. They're so busy that they're not going to really broadcast their moves, and in some cases they don't feel they have to, but it's in your best interest to think about where they're going to be next, so that you kind of show up there ahead of time and they see you and they say, oh, isn't that interesting how you figured out I was going to just reach out and talk to you, and here you are. That helps them because they have to worry less about you. And believe me, if you're tracking alongside your manager for the first week, the first month, the first 3 months, the first 6 months, you become like their right-hand person. They know that you know them. They know that you know their ways. Not in a creepy way or anything like that, but you can anticipate their moves and where they might be. You're not going to get this right every time, but it's a blessing for them because they're so busy and they're doing so many different things to know in their mind that you are more than likely nearby. Not physically nearby, but nearby in the sense that you can be called upon in an emergency. You can be nimble and help them out of situations that they need to be helped with, that sort of crop up as a natural way of just, it's naturally inherent in the business organization that things crop up. So if they know they can count on you because you're kind of watching where they're going, you're managing them, then they know that they can count on you that way. So imagine being a manager, and here's another huge point that I try to explain to people. Your manager does not have all the answers. So things are going to come up all the time in the workplace, like a policy change or a process change, or any number of things that's just going to come up as the way business is being done. And everyone needs to stop and think about, okay, how are we going to deal with this now? So understand this very simple, fundamental concept. Your manager does not have all the answers. Now, as a manager, they're supposed to never say, I don't know. Well, that's good and bad, mostly bad for you, because they're going to give some kind of answer when you ask them something, that might not be the best answer. So what you want to do is realize that there's a series of things that they're dealing with. They're managing other people. They're trying to do their own job. They have people above them who are managing them. So work and orders are rolling down from above them, through them, into you. So they are dealing with their own managers. So when they get to you, they don't want to have that pit in their stomach or a sense of anxiety about how they're going to manage you. You have to make it as easy for them as possible, because that makes their life easy, and believe me, it makes your life easy too. So understand that they don't have all the answers. So when you're working with your manager on solving a problem or building a road that doesn't exist somewhere, you need to try and bring as much to that as you can, and offer your suggestions and offer your solutions to try to resolve the problem that the two of you are working on, such that it gets off the table and there's a resolution for it. If you can be smart about that and bring as many solutions rather than questions, that's going to benefit you in enormous ways. And that's going to make life easier for a manager, which will make life easier for you. And you become a person that can easily come up through the organization, because you get, identified as a person who's a team player, easy to work with, who understands the culture and understands how things work around here. So as I say to someone that I currently work with, their manager doesn't have all the answers. And it's a blessing to go to your manager and say, look, I know we're dealing with this, but here's my ideas. Here's my solutions. These might work. Let's try this. And you'll see that they're willing to work with you, and it relieves them of trying to have to solve every single problem in the organization. Okay, here's another point. You don't want to be the kind of person who sits and waits to be told what to do. Oh, never do that. That's the kiss of death. Because if you're managing someone and you're not sure what they're doing, or you're not quite sure if you can trust them, that's really bad. That marks you as a weak link in the chain. So you don't want to be that way. So you want to build this history with your manager of always being there, always working on something, and you want to get them, here's where you're going to have to manage them, you need to get them to a place in their mind where they don't worry about you and what you're doing, and they trust you, and you've built up credibility with them. And then you want to be careful never to damage that. But what is involved in doing that? It means always doing your job, always showing up when you're supposed to be there, showing up for work on time. If it's through an electronic means and they email you, try to email back as quickly as you can. If you're on chat, try to respond as quickly as you can. And you really should put clients first and then your manager, but you have to strike that balance of okay, you have to take care of your manager, and know that your manager is looking for your help. Not looking for you when they ask you a question and you say, I don't know. That's bad. If they ask you a question and say, I don't care, I'll do whatever you tell me to do, that also is bad. But at the same time, you can't be overbearing and try to steamroll over them. So if a manager is looking for your help, you have to give them the help they're looking for, because believe me, they don't know everything and they don't have all the answers, and it's a blessing if you can help them out. So this concept of thinking about managing your manager is something that takes a while to get used to, and there are many, many different opportunities to do this. You just have to look through them as you go through the workday and as you go through building your relationship with your manager. So you'll find these opportunities all along the way. And you don't have to be overbearing. You don't have to be patronizing. You don't have to be a kiss ass or a brown noser. You don't have to do any of that. What you're really doing is twofold. You're making your life easier by helping your manager to manage you. But at the same time, you're making their life easier by helping you to manage them, so that there's no friction there and you can actually get your job done. If they ask you to do a project, my advice to you would be to spend time building out as much of that project as you can. Here's an example. My manager asked me to work with him on a document. The document had nothing in it. It was not even started. And this was a point of anxiety for my manager because he was like, oh, we have to create this document and I don't even know where to begin. I said to my manager, let me take this. Let me start it. I'll open the document. I'll title the document. I'll put the document in a folder where we can both access it. I'll create a table of contents. I'll rough out some topics. And then we'll begin to backfill those topics in the document. He was floored that I was willing to do that. It was an enormous blessing for him. And what we ended up with was, where we had nothing to work with, we had something to work with. Maybe that something wasn't 100% accurate. Maybe it wasn't as close to where it needed to be in the end, but at least we had a framework to work with. So when you're asked to do projects by your manager, or your manager is asked to do something and nothing exists, it's just, empty space, try to create that as best you can and show up to the next meeting with that. That way you're going to have a framework to work with. You just want to be low impact as possible. If you're in a big organization and your manager's managing a lot of people, you don't want to be one of those people that they roll their eyes and think about, oh, I don't really want to speak with this person, or I'm not interested in talking with them, or they're so difficult, or all they do is complain. Believe me, if a manager is managing 10 or 12 people, a lot of what they're hearing is redundant. And a lot of what they're hearing is employee pain and complaining and moaning about things that maybe that manager can't do anything about. It's the workplace. There's a lot of stuff that isn't perfect, but I would reserve the most important things, the most important pain points for time with your manager, rather than the little frictional things that may seem small to you, but collectively they're listening to a lot of that across the team. So that becomes a real headache for them and a bore for them, and they're not excited about their job anymore. So tracking along with your manager is another one. If you can anticipate where they're going to be and try to show up there right next to them, they love that. If they're out moving around, not physically, but in their brain and thinking about where am I supposed to be with this particular project or in this timeline, and they look over and they see that you're there with them, that's huge because they know that you're a person that they can rely on. So you really kind of need to think about, how are they moving? How are they responding to things? What kind of patterns are they displaying? And you begin to pick up on that after a while. So that's going to be a blessing for them, because when they get in a crisis, you're going to be the person that they look to for help. And ultimately, this should help you in your career, because you become a person who is a team player and easy to work with and understands the culture. And, if you're a blessing for people, they want to keep you around anyway. So, all right, I just wanted to do this quick video in this career series about managing your manager, because it's something I've done for decades. And all of the people I've worked with, all the managers that I've had, have really been grateful to me for doing this in a way that they say that out loud to other people. Joe always shows up with his agenda written down, and he emails it to me beforehand. He always thinks about how to build roads that aren't built. He's willing to take on projects that are at zero and at least show up with something. And there's all the other things that they don't say out loud, you try not to be a headache or a pain in the neck. That's a blessing. And I need you to take all of this about managing your manager in context, right? You don't want to give over too much of yourself. You don't want to be taken advantage of. You don't want to end up on the losing end of this. So it is a careful dance that you need to do. You're giving more than perhaps other people on the team are giving, in the fact that you're trying to envision where your manager is heading so that you can be there when they show up in that spot. You're right there, and you're making life as easy as possible for them by showing up with an agenda. You've thought things through. You're working on projects that are being, filled in and they don't have to worry about it anymore. But you need to be careful because, managers are people, and there's good people, there's bad people, there's a mix of all kinds of people. So yeah, you want to be conscious of not giving too much because you don't want the rug pull at the end. So you want to keep this a balance where the work you're doing with your manager and the work you're doing managing your manager is helping you as much as it is helping your manager. Again, you want to stay off their radar screen in a negative way. You don't want to be, a bump in the road for them. And if you can get them in a place where they're not worried about you, that's going to allow you to do your job and keep one eye on your career trajectory and keep them happy and keep them out of your hair, so to speak. So it's a difficult technique to get to master. But I would say that the easy things to do are watch where they are, watch how they conduct themselves, look for patterns in how they're operating, and show up where they need help. And be easy to manage and just get done with it. The meetings you have with them, great, wrap that up. You've got your list of things to do. It's clear. And by the way, if they give you something to do and you don't understand what they're talking about, you need to stop them. And you need to get it in writing, get it in an email, send them an email. This is what I think you're asking me to do. Is this correct? Because you don't want to be put in a situation where your manager asks you to do something and you kind of know how to do it, or you kind of think you know what they're talking about, but in the end you're getting it wrong. That's a giant waste of time, and it's a frustration for you and a frustration for them. So part of managing your manager is when they ask you to do something, you need to make sure you understand it. And here's the hard part. If you don't understand what they're asking you, even though they're super busy and they're running around and you don't want to ask, you have to ask for additional clarification. Believe me, you need to get it sorted out beforehand. It might be a little painful up front, but it is exponentially more painful if you start to get it wrong and time has passed. So managing your manager is sometimes they don't communicate effectively, and you need to hold them and make sure you get the information that you need to do the job they're asking you to do. Okay. Long-winded here, but you get the point. This is part of the career series here at Vox Pictoria. I'm Joe. I hope this video helped you out. The goal here is to give you some of this wisdom that I have to help you in your career. Hopefully that concept helps you out. I will see you in the next video. I'm grateful. We're growing the channel here. We've got 30 subscribers now. Thank you to all the 30 people who've subscribed. Thank you so much. I'm grateful. Off I go. Bye.